I'll turn the microphone on so that more people can hear me. And I want to welcome our witnesses here today. In the interest of time, I apologize about trying to find too many different ways to do things in too small amount of time. So that seems to be the world we live in. But I'm going to dispense with my opening remarks and yield to our ranking member, Mr. Courtney, and turn to him.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses and also for your time yesterday, where the two of us had a chance to catch up on this afternoon's testimony. Again, I'm here just to pinch hit for Don Norcross, who is on the mend, and hopefully he'll be back in the saddle by the end of this month. And I also will submit his statement for the record. I would just note, though, that he did really want to make sure that we don't overlook the issue of workplace safety in terms of, again, this enterprise, that we're definitely moving quickly to address. And so, General Duncan, if you have any comments in terms of, addressing that, that would be, I think, much appreciated for Mr. Norcross's interest, who I'm sure is listening in as we're here today. So with that, I'll yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Courtney. I'm going to go to our witnesses now. And whatever order you all like to begin, Mr. Ronnie, we can start with you.
Thank you, Chairman Whitman.
Thank you.
Chairman Whitman, Representative Courtney, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify alongside representatives from the Army's munitions enterprise. Secretary Hegseth has provided the department a clear mandate to rebuild our military by matching capabilities to threats and reestablish deterrence. Revitalizing the defense industrial base is foundational to both imperatives, especially when it comes to munitions production and sustainment. Years of inconsistent procurements and reduced or idle production lines have negatively impacted the U.S. munitions industrial base. Select munitions inventories are depleted, and current production capacity is not sized to meet increased demand. As a critical strategic capability, the department is aggressively working to address these challenges and quickly increase U.S. munitions stocks. The department uses the munitions requirement process to estimate munitions needs for operational plans, to deter adversaries, and support training, testing, and security cooperation. This process provides a strategic demand signal that guides the department's efforts. Monthly readiness and inventory health assessments identify munitions below required inventory levels and mismatches between usage and planned production. Likewise, the department uses the Munitions Readiness Initiative analytic tools to determine where we can leverage sustainment and maintenance capabilities to repair, reset, or extend the shelf life of munitions. The war in Ukraine has demonstrated that modern conflicts can consume munitions at rates far beyond peacetime forecasts. The ability of the industrial base to surge represents a strategic deterrent, and reconstitution timelines are now a metric of combat credibility. Sufficient capacity to surge and reconstitute munitions inventories must be treated as a core defense capability in the organic and commercial components of the industrial base. The administration is prioritizing this critical capability area, and we appreciate Congress's focus on munitions in the budget reconciliation process. The department has also established a munitions war room that, with the forthcoming Joint Energetics Transition Office, or JEDTO, works to expedite the qualification, scale-up, facilitization, and adoption of new technology for energetics, components, and long lead time items. While we complete formal stand-up with the JEDTO, the work has already started to develop and scale production of new energetic materials for munitions critical to operations in the Indo-Pacific, among other efforts. The department appreciates Congress's leadership in directing the establishment of the JEDTO to reduce siloed efforts, unify work streams, increase focus, and enable cross-department efficiency. The department also appreciates Congress granting the authority for multi-year procurements for critical munitions, which foster market stability and allow suppliers to right-size production capacity to meet demand. Consistent procurement by the military services is crucial to maximizing the return on investment across the munitions industrial base. Ultimately, it's better to buy now and use later than wait for a crisis and rely on intermittent investments to rapidly surge production capability. It's also important that the department improves its ability to inspect, test, maintain, and perform depot-level repairs of existing munitions. This requires securing the necessary technical data to ensure we have the maintenance capabilities to meet our core logistics responsibility. While much work remains, the Department and Defense industrial base providers are taking decisive action in accordance with the Secretary's direction to overcome munitions production challenges and increase stockpiles. In closing, the Department thanks Congress for its continued partnership. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Marani. Now we'll go to Mr. Grassano.
Chairman Whitman, Ranking Member Courtney, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to be here today and testify. I have the honor to serve as the Director of the United States Army Combat Capabilities Development Command Armament Center, the Army's premier research and engineering institution for armaments and lethality, located at Picatinny Arsenal, New Jersey. Energetic materials, including explosives, propellants, pyrotechnics, are critical in ensuring our soldiers and the joint warfighter have the most advanced, reliable, and dominant weapon systems in the world. The Army, along with our partners across the Joint Services and the Department of Energy, is conducting critical research and development on energetic materials and methods for the manufacture and inspection. These efforts are producing promising technologies, such as next-generation explosive fills, advanced initiation systems, and improved processing techniques that increase range, survivability, and lethality, while also improving safety, affordability, and efficiency, leading to superior lethal capabilities for our soldiers, which are enabled by the men and women who make up the munitions organic industrial base. We're building upon a legacy of demonstrated improvements that are making a difference for our joint warfighters. Army-developed energetics like the IMX series of explosives saved lives in Iraq and Afghanistan by replacing sensitive energetics with safer, more effective alternatives. In contrast, the war in Ukraine has shown the devastating consequences of relying on unstable fills, a vulnerability our adversaries can't afford and we won't accept. Looking ahead, we're supporting the Secretary of the Army and the Chief of Staff's vision for transformation in contact and concept-driven transformation. By optimizing ingredients like CL20 and applying emerging technologies from AI and robotics to additive manufacturing to unlock energetic-driven weapon system performance that was previously unattainable. These innovations aren't just enhancing our technical edge, they're making the production of our munitions safer for our workers, more affordable for the taxpayer, more agile in response to demand, and more resilient to supply chain and environmental disruptions. Mr. Chairman and distinguished members of the subcommittee, energetics are an important strategic asset. With your continued support, we're ready to lead the Army and the Joint Force into the next era of energetics innovation, ensuring our soldiers are unmatched on the battlefield now and in the future. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Grassano. Now we'll go to Major General Ream.
Chairman Whitman,
Thank you.
Representative Courtney, distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I serve as the Joint Program Executive Officer for Armaments and Ammunition and the Commanding General of Picatinny Arsenal in the great state of New Jersey. For more than a century, Picatinny Arsenal has stood as a symbol of technological innovation and strategic significance. Today, our team of military and civilian professionals remain laser-focused on developing technologies and capabilities that maintain our nation's superiority and overmatch against any potential adversary. Our mission at Picatinny Arsenal is to develop and field safe, reliable, and lethal armaments and ammunition at both speed and scale, and to give our joint warfighters and international partners the capabilities they need to deter aggression worldwide and, if called upon, the decisive tools to fight and win our nation's wars. The Army is very appreciative of the authorities and resources provided by Congress to assist our efforts in rebuilding the arsenal of democracy and in strengthening our defense industrial base for the challenges that lie ahead. The U.S. defense industrial base has not seen this level of investment in new or expanded facilities for generations. In the last 2 fiscal years, thanks to the support and confidence of the U.S. Congress and the Department of Defense, the Army has invested $4.9 billion to build new production lines and add new capacity and resiliency to our supply chains across the country. In parallel, we are expanding and modernizing existing facilities to increase speed, flexibility, and capacity. The goal is to implement 21st century production capabilities that can generate the ammunition stockpiles necessary to sustain our national defense during a surge time environment. As an example, in 2022, we were producing just 14,000 rounds of 155 artillery projectiles per month. Today, those same facilities have more than doubled their production. We expect to see further capacity increases to 100,000 per month with the new facility investments that are nearing completion. These new facilities and production lines are also equipped to produce the munitions that incorporate innovations at the round level. So, for example, extended range artillery that can reach deeper into enemy territory with greater precision. 155 cannon cargo artillery that can deliver operations enabling payloads in contested environments. Proximity fuse technologies for weapon systems that counter the use of drones by our adversaries, and the family of 6.8 millimeter ammunition that enhances the lethality of the next-gen squad weapon systems. We have also taken steps to secure our supply chains. We like to say from the ground to the round, identifying and mitigating the risks that may threaten our ability to produce munitions at scale. For example, we've leveraged more than $370 million in Defense Production Act Title III funded projects to establish or expand domestic sources for critical munitions components, like antimony sulfide, which is essential to conventional munition production. It is also important to note that the requisite increases in the size and diversity of our stockpiles would not be possible without the skilled expertise of the great Americans, the scientists, the engineers, and the technicians who work in our arsenals and the munition facilities around the country. Their expertise and passion fuel our progress and ensure the United States Army and the Joint Force remain the most lethal and technologically advanced force in the world. As we work together to prepare for what the future may bring, we are sending a clear message to any would-be adversary that the United States, along with its allies, stands ready to deter any aggression. Mr. Chairman and distinguished members of this subcommittee, we appreciate your continued and steadfast support to our soldiers, our civilians, and our families. I look forward to your questions.
Major General Ream, thank you. We'll now go to Brigadier General Duncan.
Use the microphone. Good afternoon, Chairman Whitman, Representative Courtney, distinguished members of the Tactical and the Land Forces Subcommittee. Thank you for inviting me to testify here today to discuss the Army's Organic Industrial Base and Joint Munitions Command. The Army's OIB is crucial to military readiness and national security. It consists of government-owned and operated facilities that produce, maintain, and repair essential military equipment, from weapon systems to vehicles and ammunition. The OIB ensures DoD can meet their joint force demands in war and peace. I recently took command of Joint Munitions Command at Rock Island Arsenal, which is an important part of the U.S. Army's logistics and sustainment operation. Joint Munitions Command provides the joint force with ready, reliable, and lethal munitions at the speed of war, sustaining global readiness. JMC and its 18 OIB installations across the nation support the production, storage, distribution, and demilitarization of munitions. JMC and its government-owned and operated installations recently demonstrated their value when faced with short time frames and high-volume demands in support of presidential drawdowns. These sites demonstrated extraordinary endurance, adaptability, and logistic strength. Their ability to surge operations and push past previous outload records reflected an infrastructure that is designed to deliver in critical situations. Even as they provided sustained support for regional conflict, they upheld critical inventory levels necessary for ongoing training, proving that these facilities remain the foundation of the joint force readiness and strategic flexibility. Thank you for your continued support, and I look forward to today's discussion.
Brigadier General Duncan, thank you so much. I want to thank our witnesses, and we'll begin with some questions here. I want to point to the language in the NDAA in FY24 that established the direction to the department to form a joint energetics transition office. And the reason being is because there was lack of central authority and strategy for what we were doing to modernize our weapon systems based on not just emerging technology within energetics. We're just based on existing technology that could better our weapon systems with more range and lethality. Reports were due to Congress at the 1-year mark and 2-year mark, and to this point, we've received very limited communications back from Congress. Another part of that FY24 NDAA was a requirement to look at, again, those modern chemistry elements of our weapon systems, that is compounds like CL20, which stands for China Lake, which we developed. We developed here, and our adversaries use that as their metric, and we use a metric that goes back to chemistry on weapons back to the 1940s. We mandated a pilot program to integrate CL20 into selected weapon systems to do some testing to figure out, what opportunities are there? How can we address the issue with range and lethality? We are getting outsticked by our opponents, as the word goes, and that means their weapon systems go farther and they're more deadly than ours. To me, when we've developed the technology there for us to do that and our adversaries are using that as their metric, that's kind of a wake-up call for us. So, we haven't seen anything of substance going on with doing that work on CL20. So, Mr. Marani, I wanted to get from you, where are we in the process of establishing the Joint Energetics Transition Office, better known as JEDTO? And do you have a date as to when we can expect the office to be operational? And can you commit today, and I want to hear from you on that, the establishment of JEDTO in compliance with the congressional requirements that we put in the fiscal year 24 National Defense Authorization Act?
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. So I'll start with guilty as charged in not standing it up on time. We recognize that we're late in meeting those congressional reporting requirements. So following our office call, I actually went back to the Pentagon and started knocking on some E-ring doors to get the status at least of the first of the reporting requirements. So that is pending with the Deputy Secretary right now.
Yeah.
So I also want to commit to standing it up in accordance with the law. And I want to also thank you for the language and the direction. Quite frankly, this kind of language and top-level direction helps, as I mentioned in my opening comments, break down some of the silos across the department, helps us with the collaboration with our partners. As I mentioned, work is ongoing right now. You mentioned CL20, showing some great promise there.
Yeah.
That's a pretty hot burn that is going to get us some range. Mm-hmm. We have our Joint Production Acceleration Cell, who is working munitions right now. Between munitions and critical minerals, those two things are, I'll say, the conversations I have the most with the Deputy Secretary, and you have his attention, his personal attention on both of these. So going forward, we will get you better information to meet the reporting requirements so you understand where we are in the development. We are prioritizing this, and I look forward to briefing you in the future on the status.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Marani. Mr. Grisano, I wanted to talk a little more about the chemistry of energetics. The United States through the years has put a lot of focus on precision. So we've done a pretty good job with seekers. If we want to get on target, we know how to get on target. The challenge is if the target's farther away or our areas of the weapons engagement zone, better known as the WEZ, gets bigger and bigger and bigger from our adversaries, that creates a challenge for us. And it really is a physics and chemistry challenge. We know that novel energetics, things like CL20, provide a great opportunity for us to be able to close that gap. Can you give me some idea about where we are with CL20 and integrating that into munitions? And remember, the FY24 NDAA said two things. It said, let's take 3 existing weapons platforms and look at integrating CL20 into those, so we're not reinventing the wheel. Let's figure out we can do a lot of learning there. And then to look at novel energetics for every new weapon systems. And as our weapons magazines begin to get drawn down with existing weapons like Stingers and Javelins, and we know there's certain elements of those platforms that are good. Stinger's got a great seeker on it. Range and lethality, we could probably do better. So give me your perspective about where we are today with modernization of our weapon system, both existing and what we're looking at on newer weapon systems in replacement as we're looking at weapons magazines based on novel energetics like CL-20?
Thank you for that question and for your interest in making sure that our warfighters have the best possible weapons. And we share that interest. And we work diligently every day to make sure that we put the most advanced capabilities into our soldiers' hands. Yeah. Regarding CL-20 specifically, so there has been ongoing work with that for a number of years now. As you know, it was discovered in about 18 years ago or so, and we've been developing it ever since. One of the problems has been that the materials were not readily available and it was very cost ineffective. So since then, we've made some recent improvements and we were able to create formulations to be able to produce it at a much more economical rate. And we're looking at now scaling up production here, which will make it more available for researchers as well as for weapon systems developers to put it into their end systems. I just want you to also understand that putting CL-20 in just doesn't magically make everything better. So
right.
The system has to be redesigned around it, right? So if you put CL-20 pure into a 155 round, you'd create dust and there'd be no lethality, right? So you have to purposely redesign existing systems to take advantage of the greater capability that it has. Sure. And the biggest benefit there in the most cases is that you can get the same performance with a smaller warhead, which then allows you to get further range. Yes. Right. So those are the huge benefits that we have. The Army's looking at incorporating into a number of different systems we have right now. A couple of different types of warheads for penetration, for blast frag, and other ways to reduce the warheads and get longer range. So we're actively working a number of different systems to get those deployed as we speak.
That's great. Well, thanks. Yeah, I know it's a complex solution that takes all the different elements there, the chemistry, the physics, and the weapons technology to take advantage of that. But we've in the words of the immortal Jerry Reed, we got a long ways to go and a short time to get there in relation to what our adversaries can do. So with that, Mr. Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, General Ream, in your remarks, you mentioned the Defense Production Act, Title III, is sort of one of the tools that, again, this kind of rapid shift that's happening in terms of, people's portfolio that are testifying here today. Again, that's a law that goes back to the Korean War, and sometimes it sort of disappears from view and certainly kind of reemerge. Can you talk a little bit about just sort of how the mechanics and gymnastics of using the Defense Production Act and how that can accelerate, an industrial base initiative like this?
Appreciate that question, Representative Courtney. So our focus has been on readiness here. Ukraine has really highlighted, the significant demand. And, I'd mentioned also the investments that are being made in infrastructure and our Army ammunition plants, but that's insufficient. Supply chains matter. And what we quickly learned is a lot of the key precursors, a lot of the key materials that we need to produce ammunition is not manufactured here in the U.S. And so as we looked at this, in terms of, time horizons, we needed to produce munitions now. And so initially we were looking at international sourcing, friendly sourcing where we could. But in parallel, in terms of national security and kind of long-term strategy is, hey, we need to make those investments here in the U.S. And so, for example, steel, so we use specialty steel alloys. And, with the ramp up with 155 artillery in particular, we've made major investments in U.S. steel companies to rapidly surge, capability, increase their capacity and infrastructure. That has benefits not only to the conventional ammunition portfolio, but will also benefit, our rocket and missile portfolios. It'll benefit, our armored platforms, going forward that leverage, the same specialty steel alloys.
So in terms of the investments, there are investments that the government, right, is making in terms of, again, these different sort of companies or firms that you think can satisfy the requirements. And does that sort of happen through the Army? Does that happen through an undersecretary? Again, I think it's an opportunity to sort of, be an educatable moment, teachable moment in terms of just this law.
So this has been a great authority for us, and we work hand in hand with our OSD teammates to submit our requirements, and then that is prioritized. Another great example is antimony sulfide. That's in all our primers, and that touches about 2/3 of our conventional ammunition portfolio. Recently, that was only adversary sourced, and they have weaponized, the supply chain against us. We're very fortunate that, we had stockpile inventory of antimony sulfide that we've been able to leverage, and that bought us time and space to also qualify a second source, another international source. But in parallel, we leveraged the DPA Title III to make investments in a mine in Idaho, right, to work through the engineering analysis, some of the environmental permitting requirements. We recently received a favorable record of decision to allow us to reopen a mine and produce that critical, precursor material that's in all of our conventional ammunition.
Well, thank you. I mean, again, I think it's nice to hear, that there's real results that are happening from a program that, again, can move quickly, because, I mean, that's kind of the name of the game right now in terms of just our industrial base. So, General Duncan, I mentioned at the outset that Mr. Norcross, had great interest in terms of just the issue of workplace safety. Obviously, we're dealing with, factories and operations and enterprises where there is some risk. So maybe you can, talk about that a little bit.
Sure, Congressman Courtney, appreciate it, and on behalf of Congressman Norcross, appreciate the concern for our workforce. Our people are our most important asset. And as you said, it's plants and facilities and processes and things, but when you add that the fact that we're producing explosives and munitions, it's even more inherently dangerous. And so safety is worked into everything we do, not just in my job as the day-to-day overseer of daily operations, ensuring people have the right protective equipment and are following the procedures, but even to the design of the buildings and the facilities that we have, so that we use tried and true methods that we've used for decades to make sure that the risk to humans is mitigated in our processes that we have. No matter how much you prepare, accidents do occur, but when those occur, we want to make sure we do everything possible to mitigate risk to our workforce and the lives of the people, all the way even to where these facilities are located within a geographic area, to make sure that also the public is protected as well. Thanks for that question.
Thank you. Yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Courtney. We'll now go to Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The topic of energetics, and we became somewhat interested in it on this topic probably a couple of years ago on Select China Committee. We talked about this. So, what is the base energetic that the United States uses? What compound?
The bulk of our explosives and energetics are RDX and HMX based.
And when were they developed?
Oh, very long time ago.
What is the base energetics that China uses?
Currently, they're using more and more of CL-20 as their base energetic.
So they've gone through the testing, they've gone through the things that we are starting to do, and they've determined that that's the energetic that they're using. And so our warfighter now may be at a disadvantage. Their missiles may go farther, their rounds may go farther, their rounds may be more lethal than ours. And this thing, the CL-20, was developed in the United States, and we're now just starting to look at it. One thing that really kind of irks me is that Congress mandated, actually, the creation of the Joint Energetics Transition Office 2 years ago. Is there a reason why the Defense Department ignored us for 2 years? Mr. Moretti? I guess you're new, right? You're new in the job? Are you with the administration? Have you been here for a while, or are you new?
So I'm acting in the capacity of the Assistant Secretary of Defense for sustainment. The office that would actually implement that is not my office. But again, in my comments I made, we have not been idle. We've had a joint production acceleration cell that has been engaged at looking deep into munition supply chains, identifying those subcomponents where we have constraints. We, as you heard with our DPA Title III investments, also managed through our industrial base policy team. We've invested
I hate to cut you off, but we mandated that you put a joint
Yes.
energetics transition office. Did you establish one?
We have not established that
Okay,
yet.
we
and are in
did
the
that,
work-
we did that 2 years ago.
Yes, sir, you did.
Okay, so why hasn't it been done?
Yeah, I can't speak to why the office who was assigned to do that hasn't. I know we were late in establishing it. We had a transition, which is exacerbating the ability to be late, but we have elements that are going to be incorporated into what that office looks like going forward. We will establish it, and I took the action in committing to making sure that we are going to establish it in accordance with the law. But we've not been idle.
Was there resistance to establishing this office?
Not to
side?
my knowledge that there was any resistance.
So it's something that we mandated 2 years ago. There's no resistance to it, supposedly, right? And it's taken 2 years it hasn't been established yet. So it's more than 2 years to establish it. Do you think that maybe we should be a little upset up here?
I understand you're upset and frustrated. As a sustainer, I am upset and frustrated as well. But back to my point about not being idle, we've invested $1.9 billion in 155 industrial expansion. We're investing in PAC 3, MSC, to increase capacity from 550 rounds a year to 650 with the projection to go even higher. We've invested in gimlers and javelins. Across our industrial base analysis and sustainment program, we've invested in hypersonics, chemical production, solid rocket motors, gas turbine engines, and we've done that also with DPA Title III. While we haven't fully established this office, we have not been idle in making sure that munitions are a priority for this administration and ensuring that we can increase the health of the shelf of our
Mr. Morani,
munitions
I only have 5
inventories.
minutes, so I can't, I really, I understand, okay? The Russians, the Chinese have active, working hypersonic missiles. Do we?
Yes, we do.
We do, okay. But we're pretty far, we're behind the Russians and the Chinese in that technology. Are we behind, or are we equal, or are we ahead? Because I'm hearing that they're ahead of us with hypersonics.
Well, in an open forum like this, I cannot comment
Okay,
on
fair
the
enough.
technical.
Then don't comment, okay? My final thing is on steel, the special steel that we required. Who are we buying it from before?
So we had a single point of failure here in the U.S., but as I stated in my opening remarks, we were only producing at 14,000 rounds per month. As we scale to 100,000, there was insufficient capacity there to meet that demand, and so we were able to leverage those DPA Title III funds to add a new blooming furnace there, expand infrastructure. It will have benefits.
I'm over, but it wasn't from an external source, was it, or was it a U.S. source?
So that was a single source here within the U.S.
Okay. Thank you very much, and I'll yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Menez, and then I go to Mr. Sorensen.
Thank you, Chairman Whitman. Good afternoon, and welcome to all of our witnesses. I'm excited to have you all here. Especially proud to have a neighbor of mine testifying for our subcommittee. You don't have to be from the Quad Cities to be a Quad citizen. So welcome, Brigadier General Duncan, and thank you for commanding Joint Munitions Command at the Rock Island Arsenal, what we in the Quad Cities call the Rock. I'm really excited that you'll be able to speak on behalf of our own neighbors who are working to support our munitions industrial base every day. And while I'm glad to see the administration place an emphasis on munitions, I do have concerns about the Army Transformation Initiative and what the integration of Army Sustainment Command and Joint Munitions Command really looks like. The bottom line, we cannot jeopardize our readiness, and we cannot afford to lose the people who best know how to scale our munitions. So to Mr. Morani, you've worked in sustainment for a long time, and we're hearing as much as 57% of JMC's workforce at Rock Island could be slashed. With the loss of that expertise, do you think that Army Sustainment Command has the ability to drive new investments in the munitions industrial base?
Well, sir, I too am concerned about some of the drawdown of our workforce. I know there is, across the services, a hard look at where they can take these cuts. I, like you, as a sustainer, think that that's one of our core competencies in the department. It's not only a core capability, it's a core responsibility. I know that there's much innovation going on in JMC. I think that they are taking a thoughtful approach to how they're looking at their workforce and where they can take these cuts. But beyond that, I would have to defer to my partner in the Army on where those cuts are and how much risk they believe they're taking.
Thank you, Mr. Marani. To Major General Ream, the Quad Cities cartridge case facility at the Arsenal is critical part of our munitions industrial base. But many of its processes are many decades old. Now, you touched on this, but could you elaborate a little bit more on how the Army plans to work with partners to innovate and modernize our facilities?
Yeah, we have a strategy at Quad Cities. Here most recently it was producing Navy 5-inch. It's the only facility here in North America that does, brass and steel cartridge cases. But we just haven't seen the demand, for the calibers that are produced there. So our strategy now is we've got sources sought out there to industry and soliciting their feedback. And so we recently did an industry day, and we invited them to tour the facility to see, was there novel approaches, above and beyond cartridge case production to leverage, because it's a fantastic facility. And you look at the age of our Army ammunition plants and arsenals that are out there, most of them date back to 1940. That's one of the nicer facilities that we have. And so there's a lot of opportunity there. We're getting ready to do a second industry day, to see what industry, comes back with and some of their innovative ideas of how we can leverage that facility. But we're actively working in that space.
Thank you, sir. To Brigadier General Duncan, Joint Munitions Command did a great job ramping up munitions production to help Ukraine defend its democracy. What lessons have we learned? And more importantly, how should we commit to furthering our work on behalf of our soldiers with what we've learned?
Congressman, thanks for that question. It was a pleasure meeting you earlier as well, and we do appreciate your continued advocacy for the ROC. And that's a great question. What we learned, it more so revalidated, is the value of the OIB as it stood ready for that emerging requirement. And we were able to ramp up and spin quickly to that new requirement for support, and it was delivered every single time. Now, we did need to expand capacity, and we're looking at more longer-term cooperation with JPEO for bigger pieces. But those people that run these government-operated facilities were fantastic. And to the comment about ATI, sure, we're in our early phases of that. We're committed to making sure that the Joint Force gets the support that they continue to get. It gets world-class munitions support, and we retain the right skill and talent that we've developed there in Joint Munitions Command, whatever headquarters it may fall under.
Thank you, everyone, for your dedication to the missions. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Sorensen. We'll now go to Mr. McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for our witnesses. And again, I always want to thank our military men and women. We wouldn't have a country without you. General Rain and General Duncan, the Army is facing a capability shortfall of solid rocket motors, SRMs. How is the Army planning on overcoming this munitions deficiency? And I guess we'll start with General Duncan.
Sure. As I stated before, we're solid in making sure that we have a great foundation for the munitions storage and DMIL that we already have and are already operating. We're continuing to always look at process improvement and key modernization investments for infrastructure at our installations. I just recently went to Crane, Indiana, where we cut the ribbon on a new rail yard out there, the first time in many decades where we've had an improvement to the rail system out there, which is going to double their output capability at that location and help us get to more emerging requirements more quickly. And sir, I'll defer to General Ryan for...
General Reed.
So we can take that for action. That doesn't fall within the conventional munitions portfolio, but we can work with our Army teammates to get you a better answer, and we'll commit to do that.
Sure, appreciate it. General Ream and General Duncan, again, I am encouraged by recent progress concerning the new 155 millimeter artillery metal parts production facility in Texas and the recent announcement of a future TNT production facility in Kentucky. How are you both looking to onshore the production of other key munition components and expand in production capacity of key products here in the United States?
Thank you, Congressman. I think TNT is a great example. That's something that was European sourced and very quickly went to a single source. And, we had multiple lines of effort to address that to meet the demands for the 155 scale up. First and foremost, we had a here and now requirement. And so we looked at other international partners and we worked hand in glove with our Armament Center teammates to qualify additional sources in South America, in Australia, and in Asia. We also qualified Composition B, which is a 60% RDX, 40% TNT mix that would extend our TNT supplies. And then in parallel, we worked with Defense Production Act to bring the TNT capability back to the U.S. We stopped producing TNT in 1986 here in the U.S., and so to restore that capability and improve our national security is, I think, a major step forward.
General Duncan, any comments on that?
Congressman, I didn't have any further comments on that. I thought General Ryan answered that.
Appreciate you. All right, General Maroney, the organic industrial base, ammunition plants, depots, arsenals are vital to sustaining the warfighter. In Virginia, the Army owns the Radford Army Ammunition Plant, the sole nitrocellulose, I'm not sure if that's how you say it.
Nitrocellulose.
That nitrocellulose, and propellant manufacturing site within the borders of the United States. How is the Army utilizing Radford in the overall scheme for its propellant planning?
So I actually really don't want to speak for my colleagues in the Army on that, so I'll defer to that. But I would like to comment on about your solid rocket motors. So when I took some notes and through our IBAS funding, we've invested with the Army $65 million in solid rocket motors through DPA Title III. We've invested $231 million in industrial expansion. So this is one area that we've prioritized in our DPA and IBAS programs to get after some shortfalls in munitions. And I'll defer to Army on the Radford question.
Sure. And the next question could be for who's best to answer the question. But I understand that we depleted our reserves in 155 quite a bit over the last few years. How bad is the problem, and how soon can we get well? Can anybody take a stab at that?
I'll take that one. Actually, I believe you will find 155 is a success story. Earlier we were talking about a production rate of 14,000 a month. Well, I looked that up last night, and we're at 59,000 on our way to 100,000. This is an area, again, where we invested heavily based on the crisis in Ukraine, $1.9 billion since 2022. So this is a great example of where we put our money, where our mouth is. We can move pretty fast. That's about 18 months to get that almost 4x expansion. So through these programs, we can move quickly when we put that money into these GOCOs and commercial activities.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman from Virginia. Now go to Mr. Sorensen.
Thank you for an additional question. With respect to Army priorities, multi-domain operations and preparing even for future conflict, is the department being proactive or reactive, in your opinion, today? To Mr. Grisano, or Ream, or Duncan.
I think the Army is being very proactive regarding multi-domain operations. We are developing both weapon systems and munitions that could be used for both offensive fires and defensive fires across echelon and across domains. So we're not just purely looking at one-way systems. So the Army is heavily investing in that across the board and doing the command and control systems that are necessary to affect those fires.
Sir, I would just add that, from an industrial-based perspective, the Army and the department is putting their money where their mouth is. And so when you look at the critical investments that we're making, in infrastructure, I'd shared that, most of our facilities date back to the World War II surge. I was just out at Lake City, and I'd asked the team, when's the last time we built anything new at Lake City? And the answer was 26 December 1940, and we found that answer in President Truman's presidential library when he was Senator Truman with his fedora and trench coat, putting a shovel in the ground out there. But it gives you an idea of, the age of some of our facilities, and the equipment, in many cases, is original to the facility, which, drives problems in terms of, sustainment and repair parts, and how do you fix some of that equipment. And so, the other, kind of key piece is the new facilities coming in. The organic industrial base, saved our bacon. I mean, today, that's what is still producing, in support of international partners and for replenishment operations from our war reserves. And the new facilities are just now coming online. So investments we made 2 years ago are just now coming due. And that's, the trigger for this, rapid increase in production capacity that we're going to see here in the coming months.
Great. I do want to follow up a little bit on Congressman McGuire and how we touched on TNT production. We have seen how important it is to make sure that we are continuing to support Ukraine in an understanding that Russia, as it moves from east to west, with every mile, every kilometer, it gets closer and closer to Poland. I don't believe that a lot of people understand how important Poland is for our own supply of TNT. Could you touch on that and also give some more information on why it is so important that we onshore this production?
Thank you for that question, Congressman. Here recently, we were 100% dependent on Polish TNT sources, right? Prior to the war, we were sourcing from Ukraine. That facility no longer exists. And so, I'd mentioned, the great work we've done in conjunction with the Armaments Center to qualify additional TNT sources from South America, from Australia, from Asia, that are helping to defray, the work we're doing with Composition B to qualify in our munitions so that we can extend the use and use, RDX explosive that we produce in Holston, one of our key Army ammunition plants, to extend our TNT supplies. And that buys us some time and space, for the here and now, for the readiness piece, to support, some of the further developments as we look at our modernization line of effort of how do we, incorporate and integrate, some of these more advanced, CL-20 as an example, in our munitions of the future.
Thank you all very much. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Sorensen. I want to thank our witnesses for joining us today. Thanks so much for your testimony. We look forward to continuing the effort to modernize our energetics program, make sure we build weapons magazine depth, and make sure that we are up to the task of where our adversaries are, understanding that the world becomes a more dangerous place, and the best way to deter is to make sure we know that we can respond back and that our adversaries know that we can respond back. So thanks again, and the committee, or subcommittee, is adjourned.